As you all know, I have been Sorcerer and only Sorcerer since before the game even released, and in every season since. And now we're heading into Season 11, I'm a little bit concerned. Hello, my fellow sorcerers. Oh yes, let's get into what will eventually be our ideal leveling setup and flow for Season 11, but first, as always, I want to talk about the actual state of the class going into it. Season 10 was a real high moment for us. Mana Shield, Chaos Uniques, and the builds they enabled, which were basically all of them, it was kind of heaven, coupled with the insane survivability that gave us and the good old infinite teleporting super speed. It was good being a sorcerer. And we've kind of had our wings clipped just a little bit. The PTR wasn't exactly the most encouraging, and the patch notes based on the PTR are also not the most encouraging. We heard the feedback from the PTR loud and clear and decided to revisit the suite of teleport changes for the start of the season. We looked at them and then decided to actually keep them anyway. Thank you. Like, I get the mindset of wanting to make us invest fully into teleport, the actual skill on your bar, if you want to spam teleport, but it's just not the same. Sorcerer is so constricted for space in every build between uniques and aspects and itemization, and the power gained from focusing so hard to make something niche happen just isn't there. And it really does give me a big question marks over what the class is going for in Season 11. I really hope the inevitable expansion is a proper shake-up for us. The bottom line here is that Sorcerer has always been fun. No matter how powerful it's been, it's remained fun. And a big part of that fun is its identity as the class that goes fast, that farms fast, that handles medium easy content the quickest. And that is really neat. And that's kind of taken a huge hit thanks to the nerf to teleport enchant and spam teleporting in general. Basically, in Season 11, we're going to feel a lot slower. And we're even encouraged to not have teleport on our bars because of our new unique. The new unique, which is actually really, really good. Oris Vein is powerful. That's a huge damage increase and a plenty incentive to not run defensive skills on your bar. And it's a really fun one. Getting every defensive enchantment for 3 is really, really neat. It doesn't count as actually having the enchantment for something like Enchantment Master, but getting the functionality just built in and having Sorcerer builds that aren't just 3-4 defensive skills every time is definitely a refreshing change, and we're being rewarded for making that refreshing change. I really, really like to see that. It's just unfortunate that because we probably won't be putting teleport on the bar on peak endgame builds, we're kind of limited to just now the capped cooldown of the teleport enchant, which, you know, is still fine. But it's a long way off the blitz speed that we are used to, and very likely Sorcerer is no longer going to be the fastest class in the game, though there is still every chance that will be the case, as we can actually get the raw cooldown of on-bar teleport quite low, especially with new Bounding Conduit, as it's going to 4.5 seconds cooldown reduction on teleport. So taking one 40% multiplicative damage hit on Oris Vein to have both teleport on your bars and then manually do the teleport enchant as well, you'll be able to teleport fairly frequently, so it's not exactly going to feel like molasses over here. It's just not going to be literally attack, teleport, attack, teleport, attack, teleport, which you could argue maybe was too much, but like, it's not hurting anyone, it was just fun. Now it's going to be probably attack, 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 teleport, attack, 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 teleport, which is still, you know, fast, it's just not fast. But for all non-pushing content, teleport on bars as your only defensive, Oris Vein and manually doing the teleport enchant is still going to result in speed farming. Just not to the level it was, but still a very impressive level. But then to actually go to the patch notes for a moment, well, we've got some interesting little changes. Something like barrier per rank on protection here going to 15% instead of 30% is a huge hit to our survivability. That's a lot less barrierage, which again kinda sucks, and I'm not really sure why. I don't think anyone over here was like, oh, sorcerers are too damn tough, they just never die. Obviously, mana shield meant that happened, but mana shield's going away. That's not the class. So this kinda is really upsetting. The Oculus might be fun as a dedicated teleport build. It's definitely something that I want to investigate into. And new Raiment of the Infinite, giving damage reduction. The old benefit of teleporting, that does give it a little bit of a look in, because obviously we want as much survivability as we can get, and Raiment is a really good item, at least until Mythic Uniques. It's really hard to argue with Shroud of False Death, with that massive amount of raw health and the extra ranks of passives it gives. So yeah, watch that space. It's just all a bit whelming. And we have just the global stuff, like the changes to armor, resistance, toughness. The all resist on teleport is really good for that. Now we can just pile on as much as possible with diminishing returns. Sanctification, quality, that'll get into play in more endgame builds. Basically, to me, Sorcerer in Season 11 is going to have less interesting build variety, is going to be slower, and it's going to be squishy. So you might be thinking, well, what are we doing then? Well, the thing is that's typical is we're also more than likely going to be in charge of the build of the season in Crackling Energy, and that's really enjoyable to play. I loved it in Season 10, and I will totally take another season of it, especially with it being so good. It was dominant on the PTR and hasn't really been knocked down a peg. We're going to see some really, really strong Crackling Energy shenanigans in Season 11, and I'm all for that. And more than anything, I'm just not going to leave you guys high and dry for a season. I started as a sorcerer, I will always be a sorcerer, and I will always be here to kick off the season right with the sorcerer builds to use. So on that note then, let's get into leveling. And as you're seeing, we are returning to the happy home of Incinerate. And that's for a couple reasons, as recently I've been more in favour of shocking impact builds, but chiefly Incinerate as a pure leveling experience is so silky smooth and above all powerful. It might well be in contention for just the best leveling build in the game in terms of just the ease of getting it online, the power and speed it provides. You might have to stand still while channeling, but it doesn't really matter when you're just deleting everything. But in any case, this season doesn't really have any gimmicks to push us in a different direction. None of the leveling kind of builds that we have available to us have received anything significant in terms of buffs or nerfs to push us in direction patch note wise, and then the actual seasonal mechanics don't really change anything. You know, some seasons you can unlock a power early on that's like, your basic attacks do double damage. That's just not happening here, so there's nothing we really want to deliberately lean into. So we just fall back on the old reliable, and personally, because shock builds are going to be it for this season, more than likely Crackling Energy, I'd like to not play a shock build while leveling, just for the variety. You know, Sanctification and all of that loveliness just isn't going to affect your leveling experience, so it's not something we have to consider this season. Neither is the reworks to the various endgame systems. So let's enjoy a guilt-free Incinerate for its just raw power, fun, and speed without being pushed in any other direction in Season 11. And as always, I'm showing this on the current season because I have to, but as always, I just have random gear on. It's not upgraded, it's not had its affixes re-rolled, it's not perfect by any means, it's just basic aspects, there's no uniques, Paragon's not helping, and of course the seasonal powers aren't on. It's just a basic representation of the build, so you have something to look at to see it in action here. Without further ado, the skill tree from me to you. We begin by grabbing Firebolt and then Enhanced Firebolt. Obviously you can throw this out early on just as kind of filler, but it's not something we'll be relying on later. And if you also want, you can get the extra burning damage for 3 seconds, but like it lasts 3 seconds and then you need to channel Incinerate for at least 2 seconds anyway, so it's not the most, useful thing in the world, though it is fine early on when mana is still a consideration, though mana stops being a consideration very quickly for Incinerate. In any case, for now, we put 2 points in, and then we move on, and we grab the star of the show, that is Incinerate. We want to then get Enhanced Incinerate and Destructive Incinerate to get ourselves that lovely damage reduction while we channel it. Then we want to put an extra point into Incinerate so we can reach our defensives, and then we grab ourselves Teleport, Enhanced Teleport, and then we will be doing the new Shimmering, as we may as well get that resist once we teleport. Following that, we'll grab ourselves Ice Armor, and then take it down to Enhanced Ice Armor and Shimmering Ice Armor. We'll be burning through mana with Incinerate, so we want this up as often as it can be, as it's really, really good anti-squishiness for us while we plow through the leveling. And then we also grab Flame Shield, just so we have it, get that emergency button, and obviously while leveling, we're not going to be having Aura's Vein, so we can actually indulge in having all the defensives on our bar, which is fairly nice. Then we do unlock the conjurations, but at this point I would recommend we just fill out Incinerate so that we can get as much damage out of it as possible, and then we head down to here where we want to grab Familiar into Enhanced Familiar and then Invoked Familiar. Now this is kind of annoying. Casting Familiar really sucks while channeling Incinerate. It feels kind of clunky, but the damage is worth it. It lasts long enough, it's just fine. We might as well. You also then want to grab Ice Blades into Enhanced and then Roaring. This will give us some vulnerable uptime and a little bit of cooldown reduction, and it's just kind of a nice little extra button on the bar. When we eventually get to Inferno, we will be replacing Ice Blades or another button of your choice, but right now at this stage through your leveling, when you have this amount of points, and once you do get Ice Blades here like this will be the stage at which you really don't want to care about firebolting anymore, so you then put the Ice Blades on, and at this point you will have a bar that looks like this with these abilities. After that then, we want to be spending 1 more point so we can actually get to our ultimates, and I'm going to be going back and putting an extra point into Teleport just to lower the cooldown so we can move faster. Now that we have gotten to our ultimates, we initially just want to grab 3 ranks in Evocation to speed the entire build up. Your next point then is going to come all the way back up top to grab Fireball, and we will make it our first enchantment and have those chain explosions going off, cleaning screens for us while we're leveling. That then takes us back down to the ultimates in question, and we want to start then putting points into Inferno. Once we do have Inferno, and by that I mean once we have Inferno at rank 5, because now it will make everything vulnerable, we obviously want to get Prime and Supreme, and while leveling this up, as soon as you do unlock the key passive, do grab yourself Combustion. It's just one of the best instant bonus to damage you can get, and really sends Incinerate to the stratosphere while leveling, so get it as soon as it comes up. But once you have got all of the Inferno-ness, then you want to make a choice. You either want to replace Familiar, and then you can get rid of these 3 points. You only want to do that, though, if you just don't like constantly interrupting yourself and casting Familiar. In reality, to properly min-max it, you want to replace Ice Blades at this stage, and then we obviously want to refund the points from Ice Blades as we are no longer using it, and we can put a couple points into Mana Shield to make that happen, and then we may as well finish Mana Shield at this stage. Now we want to come back down here and get Endless Pyre. We want to get Warmth, and then we want to get 3 3/3 into Soulfire. Then we want to get the rest of Endless Pyre. Nice little bit of survivability and a good little bit of damage bump. If you are finding mana to still be kind of a struggle, then you can grab Fiery Surge. We've kind of got the core of everything online here, and it's at this point you'll be getting your second enchantment, which of course is going to be Teleport, so that we can, you know, move as quickly as possible. We can get more damage from other enchantments, but I think the speed while leveling is definitely the superior way to go with this. Then we can grab Glass Cannon just to buff out our damage even more. We can come down here and get protection. Even though it will be nerfed to half, it's still nice to keep having those barriers get applied. I would also then finish Teleport so it has as low a cooldown as possible, so again we can move as fast as possible. I would also recommend getting Potent Warding, as we will be taking this build initially into Torment 1, and stacking up resistances is going to be very helpful when it comes to, you know, keeping us not dead. And then we just want to continue kind of getting damage from around the place. So obviously we want to be taking Inner Flames, and then we will be coming here grabbing Permafrost, because we do have a frost skill on our bars, and then we'll grab Icy Touch. Vulnerable coming from Inferno is rather nice. Now we have 7 points left, and these start to get a lot more flexible. Me personally, and what I'd recommend is to initially grab Icy Veil. We have weaker barriers, but we still want them to last for as long as possible, but chiefly this is for your ice armor, which is going to be our big monster defensive cooldown. Then we can technically get a little bit more damage out from elemental dominance, and then you have this one final point that you can choose to spend essentially wherever you would like. It is a kind of dealer's choice. Though, for me, I'm just going to grab a second rank of Warmth for extra survivability and leave it there. And that is kind of the flow of your points while leveling, and how ultimately your skill bar will end up. Teleport, Ice Armor, Flame Shield, Familiar, Inferno, and Incinerate, with brief cameos from Firebolt early on, and a little bit of a stay from Ice Blades as you progress. This is going to leave you then in a really, really strong position to blast to 60 and immediately dominate in Torment 1 as you work towards getting the initial build online that will fuel our path to Torment 4, and I'll be with you with that as soon as possible on season launch. After that then, let's talk I just remembered that bloody tower and leaderboards aren't launching with the season. My god. In any case, let's talk gear then, beginning with your legendary aspects. While leveling, you're going to be replacing your gear constantly, though you can just get your first legendary rings and amulet, put the aspects on them, and then just leave them all the way to Torment 1, but everything else you'll be replacing as you find better. In any case, you always want to have a two-handed staff, and on that you want to have flamethrowers to split the incinerate into your 3 beams. Then on your amulet for that 1.5, you want overheating, and then for your other 3 offensive aspects, you want conflagration, you want firestarter, and then you want engulfing flames. One of the reasons incinerate is just so good while leveling is you have specifically these 5 aspects that are all incredibly powerful, and they all very much buff incinerate to the 9s. It's kind of ridiculous. Obviously, only one of them is available from a dungeon to initially getting your codex, but with how many legendaries drop like candy even while leveling, as you get the others, you will fill them all in and just get exponentially more powerful. Finding a flamethrowers and or a overheating is really the catalyst to some initial boom, and will propel you even faster. For the rest of your aspects then, on your boots, you pretty much need to have bounding conduit, so that teleport cooldown can be as low as it can be, and you won't feel so sluggish. Then on your helmet, you want something like Wild Bolt, so everyone gets pulled into your burn, and it kind of mitigates the I have to stand still nature by letting you just grab other enemies and kill them as you go. Defensively then, you want Snow Veiled, as we will be constantly ice armoring. The Unstoppable is nice, the damage reduction is nice, and then concentration. We're going to be summoning Familiars, Ice Blades for a little bit, and this just gives us nice, reliable, high uptime damage reduction. So that's your aspects. When it comes to any affixes on them, Obviously, again, you're going to be changing gear constantly, but of course, anything that gives damage over time, maximum life, intelligence, we can get cooldown reduction on rings now, which is really nice. Any cooldown reduction anywhere is great. Ranks to incinerate on your gloves. Obviously, keep an eye on your armor and your resist as you go along. Movement speed on your amulet is also really good, as is percent intelligence, and then just, again, damage over time. Anything that makes you do more damage, it's not really that important while leveling, because you're just going to be so rawly powerful and churning through gear so quickly. Decorations and runes wise, you of course want damage over time in your weapon, if you care to put decorations in, of course, armor in your jewelry, and then intelligence in your armor. The only specific runes I'd recommend while leveling are cast 5 skills then become exhausted and get 50% movement speed, which is nice, right? It's a huge amount of movement speed, it lasts for a while, it gets you to where you need to be, mitigates that slower teleporting nature, and that's quite nice. Other than that, you can just kind of put in whatever you happen to find. When it comes to the mechanics like sanctification or divine gifts, none of them are a whole lot important while leveling. Honestly, none of them are a whole lot important. Well, sanctification obviously is, but divine gifts aren't the craziest thing in the world compared to others we've had, and you just don't have to worry about them that much until you start getting into some sort of endgame. The only one to really kind of highlight is, of course, Essence of Anguish as purified, because you just gain 30% movement speed, which is nice to have, but nothing is going to make or break your leveling experience when it comes to the extra little toys we have to play with this season. When it comes to tempering then, again, you're leveling, you're changing gear a lot, it really doesn't matter, but if you really care to, well, you are going to very specifically choose fire damage, as that's just the best overall increase for what you want, and that'll get you by on your rings, your necklace, your gloves, your weapon. Everything else doesn't matter, just choose whatever you feel like, or just ignore it until you get into Torment 1 and start putting together a proper endgame build, which isn't going to be incinerate anyway. So just focus on leveling. Again, tempering is not make or break to that experience. For your mercenaries then, I would recommend Rahia, so we can add the 15% all resist, obviously with the toughness change and resist just being able to be piled on. This is going to be nice, especially as you start getting into Torment with the leveling build as you transition to your first actual Torment build. Your reinforcement can essentially be anything you want. I've left it on Variana for the attack speed. Obviously that's not the best for literally incinerate, but hey, it speeds things up in other areas. When it comes to how to play it, I feel like you know at this point, but you know, you just stand there and channel your incinerate. Of course we can use our teleports and move around like so. We can put on our fire armor as needed while channeling, same with our ice armor, and then we just cast our familiars, make sure they are on fire so they buff our fire damage, and then for any big group of elites or bosses, any situation you want to blast through quickly, whack your Inferno on top of, and then continue channeling away, moving onwards as we go, and trying to consistently maintain that incinerate buff from channeling it for long enough. Make sure that green bar stays green in the bottom right there. Other than that, you just stand and melt, and all will fall before you, and quickly at that. For an early Paragon guide, we're going to start as you might expect, going over to Elementalist, and then going left to Resilience, grabbing some extra all resist as needed, and then heading to the glyph slot. Now, ideally you'd want something like Torch, but then there's not enough willpower without upgrading it. At this point, when you get to Paragon and you're just in Torment 1, you've just finished leveling, you're not even going to have a glyph collection anyway, so just put in the best one you have that gives you some damage and activate it. Honestly, glyphs don't really matter nearly as much as legendary nodes when you're first doing your tree, so you can just go with whatever you have access to and can easily activate for benefits. What matters more than anything is then going to the gate and doing the following: grabbing yourself Enchantment Master and whacking it on so that the legendary node is in the bottom right like this. We then want to move straight towards it, grabbing yourself all resist as you go, and then we also get the the legendary node like that. We then continue on, grabbing Suffused Resilience, getting the damage reduction, getting any more all resist again as needed, and then we're going to move on in to the next board, where of course we're going to get Burning Instinct, and once again we want to rotate it so we can just get to the legendary node as fast as possible, as rushing legendary nodes is how we give ourselves immediate power spikes, and essentially we're just going to do that until we have 5 legendary nodes active. Then we can spread out and do glyphs, and that should be more than enough points spent for your initial experience. But again, this is for Incinerate. You're going to be changing very quickly once you get to Torment 1, and I'll be here to guide you through that. For now then, that is your Incinerate leveling build. An oldie but a goodie, a classic, powerful, fast despite having to stand there and channel, and a perfect fit for Season 11. Let me know what your thoughts are on both this and Sorcerer in general, and your plans for the Season 2. For now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.